Welcome back to Scratching the Surface. My name is Justin, aka Money, and I am joined alongside by a very special guest who's also been on here, Collin Vetter. Thank you for joining us.
Very excited to be back. It's been a while. I think the last episode was, Talk to Me, which was like back in November or maybe even late October. So it's been a while. You guys finally had me back on. I thought maybe for a while there, you guys were like, we're done with Collin. He's not good enough. So apparently that's not the case. And I'm excited to be back. And I'm excited to talk about it. A very interesting movie, to say the least.
Yeah. Also, one of the GOATs, my co-host, Cody, aka Junes. Thanks, Cody, for being here as well. We did take a couple weeks off. So what better way to come back with a special guest to dive into an interesting movie. Actually, was it, I think, recommended by you, Vetter? Or did you bring it up and then that's kind of why you hopped on, or was that like something planned? Or
Well, this movie kind of holds a special place because I remember Junes and I watched it at my place here in Lincoln, and then I got Tyler to watch it with me, and then I think we finally got you to watch it. So I don't know. It's just like a movie that it's been out for a while. I think 2019 is when it came out. And just movie that like I said, I find interesting. And I just thought, God, this would be a good movie. It's really honestly a really good movie to really talk about and like debate over and things like that. So
it is. And I think it's kind of classified here. Actually, I have Rotten Tomatoes pulled up, but like horror, obviously, and then mystery and thriller. But to me, this is very psychological, which, if I remember correctly, Vets, you love psychological, like kind of horror thriller. This movie really does keep you guessing, and it really is hard to predict things, unlike a lot of other kind of standard horror movies. There's just a lot of events that go on, things I'm sure we'll obviously debate and get into. So I can ask you both, but like, what was your guys's? We'll start with June's. Just like initial thoughts. Obviously, this is a rewatch. It's also a rewatch for me. I think everybody at the table here. But man, like when I did rewatch it, I was like, I forgot a lot that took place in this. So, what are your just initial thoughts? Kind of keep it spoiler free before we kind of get into it.
Yeah, Money, you touched on it briefly. Psychological distress is the ruling constituent of The Lodge. It's expertly displayed by our directors and cast. We touch on theories such as depression, anxiety, manipulation. For me, I don't consider myself easily compromised by these human behaviors. So it's captivating to see this unfold on screen in The Lodge. We see all of those psychological issues come into play. It's just crazy to see. For me, I really enjoyed that. The plot, which is especially layered, keeps us speculating constantly to what's actually going on throughout the film. I tell you what, the cohesiveness of the plot, it's chronologically ordered. It's easy to understand. Nothing is out of place or haphazard. And that leaves us with an open-ended ending that's just ambiguous enough to have us searching our phones for the true meaning.
Yeah. Speaking of endings too, like we'll really get into that. Because I am curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Like a lot of horror movies, it has a debatable ending or a way you wish it kind of would have ended in a certain way. But and you Vets, like, I mean, kind of brought up by you in the first place. What do you think from like a psychological standpoint, how this movie affected your rewatch, your general just like experience, things like that?
Yep. Well, yeah. So the reason why I like psychological movies, especially horror films, is because I'm one of those people. I know, Junes, you're not one of these people. I love rewatching movies. It's like, I think watching a movie a second time is better than the first. And I've always been that way. And with like psychological movies, you pick up on things that you do not see in the first, because essentially those type of movies kind of play with your mind a little bit and you're not really knowing what is really going on. But when you rewatch it, and for me, this is my third watch, because like I said, I've watched it with Junes once, I watched it with Tyler, and then I watched it again with Junes, is you really start picking up on some things, and it makes you kind of appreciate the little things. Like the first time, like I can see why people didn't really like it maybe the first time. If you watch it the first time, you're not going to pick up on some stuff. There's unexpected events. For me, like just the twists in the movie, it makes you think constantly and question like what you are seeing, what is going on. This movie too has practically zero jump scares, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, I don't think every horror film needs to have jump scares, but they have creepy moments in the movie.
Yeah.
Now, one of the cons could be the movie is kind of dragged out. It's kind of long. But to me, I think the movie is pretty intense throughout the entire thing because you're not really knowing what is happening, where it doesn't really seem like the movie to me is dragged out. But I could see why for some people it might. And I can't say this without meaning this is the atmosphere and the cinematography of this movie is amazing.
I love that. And I'm going to get into our movie info and synopsis just for anyone listening. And before we do kind of get into that, make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, where you can see our faces and just this full length episode. And we will have a great table talk session, especially with another set of eyes and a brain to pick. So
really looking forward to that.
It's going to be fun. So let's get into it. So during a family retreat to a remote winter cabin over the holidays, the father is forced to abruptly depart for work, leaving his two children in the care of his new girlfriend, Grace. Isolated and alone, a blizzard traps them inside the lodge as terrifying events summon specters from Grace's dark past. So Rotten Tomatoes has the release date of May 3rd, 2020. And, with the cast, like I said, very, very simple. We have, and I'll try to pronounce these right, but we have Grace played as Riley Keough, Richard Hall, played by Richard Armitage, Aiden Hall, played by Jaden Martell, Laura Hall, played by Alicia Silverstone, and let's see, who am I missing? Grace plays as Lola Reed, and then Mia Hall, the daughter, played by Leah McHugh. So yeah, let's get into it, shall we? So the movie really, very simple to follow. We open up with the family. Like I said, we have Richard and then his two kids, Aiden and Mia, and we see that there's family trouble going on. He's in like a divorce state. He wants to finalize a divorce with his current wife, and the family goes over to the father's house, and basically he's like, I want to finalize a divorce. We understand they're having trouble. The kid, you could just feel tension kind of throughout a lot of this movie with the kids, especially, and resenting Grace too down the road. But they love their mom, and things start to turn on them. And it like literally scared me because I was taking notes throughout this whole thing, pretty detailed. But we see Laura sitting down, and she literally just commits suicide. She kills herself, and I think
very unexpected.
Slightly looking down at my phone and just pop. So, and like it was so loud, I kind of jumped. But
reminds me of the movie I watched last night that you guys got me to watch, The Descent. Right. You have that at the beginning. It kind of sets the tone of the movie, kind of gets you, on edge a little bit. And that's exactly where, and like, especially this movie, you did not think that was going to happen. There was no indication, absolutely zero indication that was going to happen, especially because where she did it at, it was in broad daylight. It was sunny out, and she poured a glass of wine, and you're not expecting that.
Yeah, I think she was literally just sitting down, going through her purse, and boom. So it was just like, man, like it's eye-opening. But they attend her funeral. It's obviously very sad. And we do see shots of, I like to call it the playhouse or the replica house of the actual lodge that these guys are going to go visit. And we do see Mia, too, playing with a lot of these dolls that represent characters, I believe, in the film. And the first one, it's the doll wearing the red hat, who we learn is Laura's, their past mom. And she carries that thing with her everywhere. And she even tries to release it at the funeral, tied to a balloon. It falls back down. You can really feel the tension with these kids throughout this whole film, and resentment just tons of emotions, things you would really expect in real life from these kids. So, and I think at this point too, Richard, the father, convinces them like, hey, let's now, since, I think actually it's Thanksgiving, if I'm not wrong, and some time passes. He was supposed to get married in September to Grace. He hasn't yet because of the events that happened with Laura, but they're at Thanksgiving. He's like, hey, let's go to the mountains for Christmas. Like, hey, no big deal. We've done it in the past. I want to invite Grace. I think it'd just be a good time for you guys to get to know her, get a feel for each other, just let loose. I think it's a good bonding moment essentially for them. Yeah, they essentially pack for the trip. We get a great shot of the lodge. I mean, and we have winter weathery advisories coming up. And we get a lot of, again, Colin, like you said, cinematography of the entire acreage that this thing's on, and that just the complete loneliness feeling and isolation of what they're really getting into as the movie progresses. So I have kind of noted here too, they kind of get settled in, and there's a shot in this film because it really kept me on my toes, but like there's a shot where a door, it's like a black room, and this door just opens. So initially I'm thinking, hey, like, because it was my rewatch, but I still forget a lot of things. But like, in the painting, in the
That's
kitchen,
creepy. Yep.
yeah, I think it's like Mary possibly, or just a saint. But like, I'm wondering, like, hey, is this the spirit of Grace, or is there a presence here? Something supernatural, obviously, kind of going on. So I just wanted to throw that little thing in there too, because things like this continue throughout the movie.
Yeah, I definitely thought like right away too. Like the first time I watched it, I was like, this place is definitely like haunted. And they do a
Right.
good job at like kind of manipulating you to thinking that. But yeah, that painting on the wall, the cross, you
Mhm.
could tell it's effing Grace's mind up a little bit. She keeps
That's
staring
the
at it.
thing.
She keeps looking at it. You know that like it's bothering her.
Yeah, yeah. And it's one thing too we should really briefly quickly talk about is the kids actually go into Richard's office and find that article on Grace,
Yeah.
depicting her as an only survivor of 12 members in this cult. We get a shot of which I believe is her dad. We kind of find out the leader of the cult re- repeating these phrases over and over, and a cool freaking, I love this part of the movie, but like the POV shot of her walking around with a camcorder, and we see she pulls the covers over these bodies off of their faces, and duct tape with sin written on it, and they find out she has got a past. So yeah, we kind of learned something's wrong with Grace, and then we see those events with the religious items and artifacts at the lodge.
I should also say she has medications. She is taking
Mhm.
meds to control her own
Yeah.
type of psychological distress that she's going through. She has turmoil. So we are introduced to that as well, which is big time because there's a scene coming up, Money, where some of those meds get taken or
Yeah.
disappear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So the family and Grace, they're just trying to enjoy each other's company, right? We see them ice skating. They kind of have a scare with her when she falls in. Um, and then she, is back in the lodge. They're just trying to, Grace is really genuinely trying to like make amends with these kids. She realizes how awkward it probably is. And at one point, she even calls Aiden out, like wanting to just try to have a
Yeah.
conversation.
They want nothing to do with her.
Literally.
No. And they
But
think they blame it on Grace. Like, you came into your Richard's life, and that's why
Yeah.
mom decided to shoot herself. Like, but
I mean, you have to, even though these kids are like Tunes kept saying it, they're like little shits. You have to feel for them a little bit because it was just a few months ago their mom committed suicide. She's dead now. And now 3 or 4 months later, we have to spend time with this new girl. So I can see why they were like, they wanted nothing to do with her. But
another quick important thing too is Richard, kind of after some of these events, things that happen in between, scene to scene here, Richard actually introduces Grace to the family gun, and
Yep.
she goes off with it. He's like, give it a shot. And she just
yeah,
shoots like 4 or 5 rounds quickly, I should say, into like a tree trunk. So that plays an important factor later in this movie. Um, and then all of a sudden, Richard has to go back into the city, and he's got to leave for work. And I think too, did you guys figure out he's his work, his occupation? He's just a writer, isn't he?
Yes, and I think
I
that's
believe.
where this whole where he knows of this whole thing because I think he was like reporting on it. Apparently, is what I looked into.
So
And
yeah, that is something I want to talk to at the end, kind of, or
Yep.
later, obviously, about because I have this theory too about something related to that. So, and we could talk about it now because I think it is an important time to do it because the movie keeps panning back to the lodge replica house back at the apartment. So the little mannequin-esque figures in there keep moving like someone is manipulating this playhouse, which therefore resembles kind of the occurrences the kids and Grace are experiencing in real life. I don't know if there's a puppet master behind it or some sort of supernatural effect going on with it. I think anyone listening, if you've seen it, you kind of know what I'm trying to, put down and say here. Do you guys understand what I'm trying to say? Like,
For me, I think we all learn at some point that the kids are up to this, right? Like they are the ones
They-
that are doing all this. So the first half, you kind of think it's supernatural. You're kind of not really siding with. You're almost kind of siding with the kids, and you're like, is Grace doing something? And then it kind of got to the point where it's like, I don't think it's both of them. I think it's something supernatural. And then it's like, oh no, the kids are doing this. So what I think is, I think at the beginning, and Junes, you're the ones that actually notice this, is they have a shot, it's like for 5 seconds of the kids packing things into their bag to bring up to the lodge. And it's almost like Home Alone when Kevin is plotting to how to get the bad guys. And I think they use that lodge, they use the replica to plot on how they are going to do this. So at one scene, they show like the kids in the living room, like all like dead. And what they're doing is they're showing like how they're going to replicate that. And what they did was they brought in that like space heater to act like they all got carbon monoxide and that they all died. So I think they use that. And then they show a scene where like he's hanging on the thing. And so I really think that they were, before they went up there, they were in that little playhouse trying to figure out ways to like fuck with her and just mess with her completely.
Can we just give credit, though, to the directors, Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala, who, by the way, Vetter directed Goodnight Mommy from 2014. We watched
nice. I did
together.
not know that.
No idea they directed that, but you have to pay respect to the way they constructed this film, making us think that maybe there is something supernatural all throughout, especially on that first watch. I really had zero idea about the kids having any kind of string pulling throughout until the back later half of the film. So really freaking well done. Hats off to them. But yes, I side with you better. I do believe they were kind of getting everything prepared and planned even before the trip. These kids did not know what they were getting into by fucking with Grace here. This was just a terrible decision. It just goes to show that kids are cruel sometimes, and the choices they make can have repercussions.
Yeah. So the second half of this movie will bring up a lot of recurring points and get into, our final act, thoughts, ratings. You know the drill. So for our table talk, we're going to rank 5 movies blindly without knowing what comes next.
All right. So June's first movie is A Quiet Place Part 1.
Oh, that's actually Part 1. So I'm probably going to go. That was a pretty dang good movie. An awesome theater experience, too, from what I recall. Yes. John Krasinski did an exceptional job for writing and directing this film. I don't know how he ended up being as good as he is actually at doing this. I'm going to go with a solid 2 because there might be a movie on here that I do not like, and I want to have at least my top 2 or 3 to be sound.
Yeah. The second movie, the movie that holds near and dear to us because we watched it in college together. Not the second movie, but the first one, Creep.
I'm going 3. Creep is such a
That is an
unique
interesting
film.
movie.
It's so unique. It's so low in scale. It's not grand at all. It's just a random freaking movie you'll find on a streaming site, but it's so quirky in a way, but it's enjoyable and also somewhat scary at the same time. The dude in Creep is exactly what the title says. He's a fucking creep.
He's a
And
creep.
the ending of Creep, I think, is so good. I don't know if people listening remember the ending to Creep, but it's a really haunting way to end that film. I'm gonna go number 3, but Creep it's a good film. Do not watch Creep 2 though. I personally kind of hated that film.
The third movie is The Visit, 2015.
Ooh, The Visit. M. Night, my boy. I do think The Visit is very even with Creep.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay giving The Visit 4.
So this next one, I don't know if I consider it horror-ish. You might not, but I put it on here. 10 Cloverfield Lane.
I loved it. Number 1 for me. I'm happy with it. Number 5 is probably gonna be tough here, but I'm still okay with what I have right now. And this just goes to show it's hard to get a perfect list.
All right, number 5. Then I had. Well, this will be your number 5. The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
I'm good with it. That's actually fucking good.
Underrated
Hey,
movie. Underrated
I'm happy
movie
though. I'm happy with that. Good list, Vetter. And the thing is with these lists, we always kind of try to get an idea for ourselves of what each other have seen. And surprisingly, I haven't really missed yet. I feel like I've gotten a movie that you've seen every time, Money. And then Vetter, you nailed it. You knew I had seen those. So great list. Great freaking list.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So for my first movie, I'm gonna throw at you Don't Breathe.
Nice.
The first.
Ooh.
Yeah.
The first one or the second one?
First one.
First
The
one?
First one. Yeah.
So I actually low-key kind of liked the second one better, but the first one was still really good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I remember going to it in theaters with Junes in college, and just a very unique movie. I can't put it at number 1 though, because I don't know what else you're going to give me. So I'm going to go with, I'm going to do 3 for that one.
3. Okay. For your second movie, I'm going to throw at you The Descent. You literally just watched it last night, right?
Yeah. So
For the
watched it
first
last
time.
night. It was,
And the thing is too, just do a ballpark, but what was your initial rating for that? I am just curious, just briefly, quickly talk about it.
so if I was going to give it like a 7.8, 7.9, is that fair?
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I'm like claustrophobic, and so
Yeah.
watching that, like, I'm literally like, my palms are like kind of sweating a little bit.
Right.
I'm going to put that at number 2, I think.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that though. I like that. So you got the 2 and the 3 filled.
Yep.
For your third, I'm going to throw at you the first Paranormal Activity.
5.
5.
I'm not into those at all. Yeah,
So
I'm not.
I don't blame you. I did not blame you. So for your fourth movie, I'm going to throw The Conjuring at you.
This has to be number 1 for me, because The Conjuring holds a special place in my heart, because it's one of my first ever horror films that I started watching. And, for me, like, my favorite genre, like subgenres of the horror, is psychological, but then it's also supernatural. And this plays really part into it. And I said to you guys the other night that, like, for me, I'm not really into like the very dark demonic exorcism type. And you could make the case that this one is, but I don't think it gets to that quite of a level. But yeah, I got to put this at number 1.
And for your fifth and final film,
which will be number 4, by the way, right? Yeah, number 4.
Yeah, I'm going to be pissed, but I'm going Saw X.
Oh,
damn it.
Because, I mean, that was
an
insane theater experience for me. The film is amazing. I mean, I know you're going to agree with all that, but I didn't know whether to do Saw X first and then have The Conjuring at like 4 or something, but
so if I would redo this knowing Saw X, I would have flip-flopped The Descent and Saw around. I would have flip-flopped those. And I would have put the Saw at number 2.
I'm curious to see what you got for me.
Yep. Are you ready to go? I'm going to try to make this kind of as tough as I did with June. Some good movies in there. So I'm going to start off the bat with Oculus.
I'm probably going to go number 4 on that.
Really? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Number 2, It Follows.
I'm going 3 on that. I'm going 3.
3.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this will be the third one.
Mhm.
This is one we watched over the summer. Lights Out.
That was a great film. Very good film.
Yep.
I'm putting that at 2. So I got my 1 and 5.
Fourth one, I'll do the Babadook. Me and June just saw. It's an easy one. So the
Ah,
Babadook.
okay. This
It's
is a
actually
pretty
tough.
good film. I don't know. Literally, it's gonna be 1 or 5. So I'm gonna go 1. I'm gonna go 1.
Ooh, you're gonna be disappointed. So this is the second movie, not the first. I think it might be arguably the best second movie of any sort of,
Franchise or
yeah, franchise or anything. And that is taking place out on a farm. Annabelle 2.
son of a bitch. That was good. That was good.
That was really fun.
thoroughly
I enjoyed that. That was really fun.
It is fun. So that has been our table talk. To pick back up in the film, so we mentioned it already. The kids are playing her again. For anyone listening, this whole time they've been playing her. They are messing with her literally psychologically. And we get a scene too. I don't think we really touched on it, but we see all of their stuff hidden, like in the basement or something behind something. It's in the wall. Something Grace would have never found here. And their coats, sweaters, everything they brought with them gone. And now we know this was the moment for me too in the movie where I'm like, oh, like I totally forgot about that. And like everything really started to click. Like so many dots got connected with that scene. Grace is like really just completely gone. She is like repenting. She's kneeling on hot coals and logs from the fire, spewing out these chants. And the kids are like, I think we kind of need to ease up on her. And she's almost like we almost kind of have like it's not a chase scene, but like where she goes upstairs and they're just cowering in the back of the room. Like, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, no electricity. Our phones are dead. Our food is running low. Grace is kind of beyond herself at this point. She tries to go to the nearest town, which, from what the kids are saying, is
Yeah,
not an easy walk.
miles.
Considering the
Miles.
fact that we have probably 5 to 10 inches of snow outside, she tries going to the nearest town. She walks out on the lake in the snow, aimlessly walking to this town, and she ends up coming across, and this is hallucination. She sees this giant building in the shape of a cross out in the middle of the lake.
Yeah.
And she sees what I believe is her father, the leader of the cult, begging her to come in. So she's seeing all sorts of fucked up shit. None of it's real. She is beyond gone. She comes back to the house. She just sits outside, money, for hours. She might have been outside for a whole day from what it looked like in the film.
Mm-hmm.
She has frostbite on her lips, on her nose. She kneels down on hot wood, burning her knees, repenting.
Yep.
The kids, they try to tell her, we've been messing with you the whole time, but frankly, it's done. The deed is done in terms of fucking with her. If you wanted to mess with her, you succeeded. And she is a risk to the kids at this point, and they're just trying to get away from her.
I think what really got her too, and she was already, don't get me wrong, she was already like completely effed up, but when she found the dog like frozen outside, is I think
Grady
even got it even more like just more effed up in the mind.
Yeah. And Richard comes back. He is like, hey, he gives them a call, but obviously nobody's answering. He's like, hey, it's going to take me like 5 or 6 hours. He makes the trek up to the lodge, comes back, he can't find anybody. And he bumps into like Grace, I think, on the stairs, basically.
Yeah.
And she's got that gun. She attempts to commit suicide. The shot doesn't go off. And then she has it pointed right at him. And he takes one in the head. And he is just trying to talk her out of it. And she is basically saying, like, You need to free yourself. You're not listening. That's kind of where I got confused in it a little. I know it's related to her past and the cult she was in.
Yep.
It all ties to that, but
The whole repent.
that was, yeah.
Can we take one step back? I thought the scene where she is just completely out of it, and you mentioned they're in that like attic, kind of in the corner, and I don't think she realized that they were up there, and she realizes it when the daughter goes down to go to the bathroom, which Hayden or Aiden or whatever his name was, like you could tell he was like, don't go down there, don't go down there, but she did anyways. And I thought it was very creepy when she's like coming up those steps into the attic and she's like slowly walking towards them. I just thought that was a very creepy moment. This was right before the dad gets there, and I think it kind of sets the stage for the very ending of this movie.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to talk about too. And I think it's one of the eeriest scenes. They drag Richard, and he's at the dinner table, like eating, and they're eating a can of beans or something with crackers, and they prop him up like he's still alive. And
we get an awesome shot from behind
his
head. We see just the freaking blown out hole in the back of his head as they're all sitting at the table. Some of the directorial shots are so ingeniously placed. I have to applaud them for some of those shots.
Yeah. And basically how the bow gets tied on this movie really is Grace puts this duct tape over both kids' mouth with sin written on it. And it cuts to the credits. So,
well, it shows the gun with a fully loaded gun, which then implies that they obviously die. Yeah. Not to mention the song that they're singing, very eerie. It's a Titanic, the Near God or whatever it's called.
Near my God to thee. I will never hear that song the same after watching The Lodge.
It definitely makes, because I think it was another time in the movie that they play the song too, so it's almost kind of like the theme of this song. But if you think about it, we started this episode off talking about the start of this movie and how just crazy. Think about like the very start and the very end of this movie, both of it just very creepy. You got the start, the mom killing herself, and then at the very end you got the dad just sitting there dead, and they're all just in the room together, knowing that their fate is probably over.
Yeah, the spectrum is very wide for this movie as far as how it started versus how it ended, for sure.
The depression clings to everybody. We have the opening scene with depression and committing suicide. We see that same thing at the end. We had a brief scene also in the middle when they're watching The Thing, which I fucking loved.
Yes.
Yes. I think for me, symbolically, what that shows is depression is already within you, just like The Thing. It's inside of you, and sometimes there's nothing you can do. It's the fate is sealed for Grace at the end of this film. So good, so freaking good.
Here are before we get into like rating stuff, here are my 3 things about each character. So with Grace, first thing for me is you almost start kind of, in a way, kind of feeling bad for her when you find out the kids are part of this and doing this on her and completely just messing with her mind. For the dad, I personally think he's almost the real villain in this movie because he knows of Grace's patterns. She's a young, fragile woman, and he essentially leaves her with his kids, shows her the gun, and once again, he knows that like she is a little messed up. Mm-hmm. I think the mom dying and immediately going to Grace, knowing full well that the kids are traumatized by that, and they both expressed to their dad that they did not want to do anything with this girl. They didn't want to go up to the lodge, yet he forces them to go up there. But not only that, but makes them shack up with her, like just leaving them up there with her. Pretty much, in my opinion, not only did he take them against their will, he thought it would be an amazing idea to essentially leave the kids with her. It makes zero sense. And that's why I think at the end of the day, like dad in this whole thing is the real villain in this movie, even though he's really not in it very long. He's in the very beginning and the very end. And then for the kids, Junes and I said it many times, they're little shits, right? But they're also kids. And I think if they would have survived this, they would have learned a valuable lesson that you can't psychologically manipulate a recovered insane person for days and tell him or her, we're just kidding, everything's fine, we were just messing with you. Because when you get to that point, you're that insane, you don't have your meds, you're at that point you're done for. And you can't manipulate a person like that.
Yeah. I
That's
love that.
so well said. So
Yeah,
well
very,
said.
very well said. It is hard to distinguish whose fault things were for with, you can't blame anything for Laura's death. That just happened. And it was at the very beginning. But like, as far as the dad's decision making, the kids wouldn't have done any of that. Probably would have never have happened, Yeah, she has her past, but like that was extreme what they did, and look what happened, So
Yep.
it is hard to kind of blame things and put a pin on stuff.
Put it as like a real world example. Like, let's say hypothetically, like, your mom and dad separate, and like literally 2 or 3 months later, already onto a new person, and then that, not only that, but gonna force you to be with her for multiple days, but just you and her, and not your actual parent. Like, think about that. That's gonna, like, any kid that's 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, they're going to hate that. They're going to be like, what are we doing? And they're at the age where, they don't know kind of right or wrong. They don't know that, hey, like, you can't mess with someone like that. And so they start messing with her, thinking, oh, it's just a fun prank. Little do they know.
Yeah.
Bad things happen when you do that.
Yeah.
Someone like that.
It is tough. It is
For
tough,
me too.
but
The song "Nearer My God to Thee" that I love about it symbolically as well. Throughout the film, they are essentially getting near to God. I thought that was really creepy in a sense. And like I said, I'll never hear that song the same again.
Yeah. And I think it's time to get into our ratings. So
let's go.
I will, and I'm very curious to see what you guys have. So Rotten Tomatoes, first and foremost, has an audience score of 51%.
Oh, dang. Get out of here. You're shitting me?
No. And then they have a critic score of 75%.
Oh, I would love to dive into it. The Lodge is a revelation in recent horror. These are the type of films that I think are easy to gloss over and never get around to watching. But our duty on Scratching the Surface is to shed some light on understated gems. And I think this is one of them. It's a story with a lot of moving parts all around and enough craftsmanship to make us think and look deeper as to the real meaning behind the film. Our cast and crew did an awesome job. And while the setting and dialogue come across as restrained, it's precisely what the story requires. Each bit of frequent open silence and still shots of this remote lodge contribute to the suspense and the somewhat ambiguous ending. I can't fault the film for much. I understand the pacing is a little bit slow and nothing truly shocking develops until the final scenes, but the preliminary events that transpire set us up for that ultimate satisfaction we have at the end. With all these things considered, I'm going to 7.3. And the reason I'm below an 8 is because the film itself is not grand enough in scale. It's not like some of my favorite of all time horror films that are really true motion picture events. But The Lodge is a great streaming option for horror. And I think that you'll find a quality gem here.
Well said, though. Like, I think this also is a movie where it can be just glossed over and like, oh, thrown to the side, back burner. But like, it is a decent movie. For me, it's not my personal forte. I said it kind of earlier, the one big thing that I really just nitpicked was like, there was a time in the middle somewhere of the movie where I was like, again, like it seemed like every minute, not even maybe a minute, just like every 30 seconds to a minute, it's like something else is going on, and it almost felt hard to just keep up with like what's going on. And like I couldn't even tell how many days have passed since like Richard left, how many nights they've went through, and just the series of things happening. Like my whole time sense of time, and maybe they did that on purpose. My whole sense of time was thrown off, getting into the audience's head a little bit, maybe. That was like my one big thing I kind of was like nitpicking. And then we found out the kids were in on it. So I'm like, okay, so this is what we're doing now. But overall, like, wasn't a bad film. I the ending obviously was pretty damn good, but not like my personal forte. Acting though was very good. The acting from this cast was amazing. The shots filmed were great. And yeah, like you have a lot of real life experiences kind of in this movie with the emotions, the divorce, the kids, the resentment, things of that nature. With that being said, my and I'll tell you my initial rating because I did she sit next to me. I did watch it with my fiance, and my initial rating was like a 7.1, which is kind of, I mean, you had a 7.3, but
Yeah.
after slept on it, whatever, I'm going 6.8. So
Oh,
bumped
Oh,
it
you
down
lowered
below a
it.
7. I'm not looking at Rotten Tomatoes' scores. I'm kind of right in the middle between actually the critics and the audience. So I was surprised though, 51% for the audience. That is low.
I was
So
very surprised.
yeah, I'm really surprised by that too.
that's yeah. So
Yeah,
that is
I'll
my
keep
rating.
I'll keep it short and simple just because I feel like I've really touched on pretty much everything that I wanted to touch on.
Sure.
When you factor in this movie compared to other horror films, yeah, it's not like it doesn't even touch the top tiers of other horror films. But when you're just talking on its own, which when you do rate movies, that's kind of how you want to go. You don't really want to compare it to other things because every movie is kind of its own unique thing. And this movie definitely is unique. It's just different. It's
Mhm.
between the short cast or the small cast, I should say, only a few characters, one setting essentially, and just one little house. And it does have flaws. Every movie has flaws, and sometimes flaws you can't get away with that. With movies that aren't very good, if you're gonna have flaws, like it just ends up being bad. But you can have a really good movie with some flaws, and it's okay. For me, I'm gonna give this movie actually like an 8.4. I know I'm high on it.
Yeah.
I'm high on it. I
God,
really
figured
like
you'd
this
be
movie.
high.
Now, if this is the first time people are listening to me, because I've been on obviously a couple times, you might be like, wow, this guy doesn't grade hard. And actually, I might be a tougher critic than June's. I know your brother even mentioned it. I actually grade things pretty tough. You go back and you look at some of my scores on some of our past movies.
Yep.
I'm like below both of you guys on almost like every film. So that goes to show how much I actually did enjoy this movie.
I'm glad we had a episode where this movie you really did enjoy this. I got our spreadsheet pulled up. This is actually the 5th time you've been a part of our podcast. So
Yep.
I think with that, I love this. I love our table talk. Nothing I'd rather do on a Saturday morning than talk a horror movie with you two fellas. So with that, June's Vets, it's been a pleasure, and we've been scratching the surface.